With Season 1 coming to a close, 3 new maps coming, and having changing opinions on some maps since my last tier list, I figured now would be a great time to make an updated one and then compare it to the original. Let's check it out. Hey guys, Nightfall here, and today we're going to do an updated XDefiant map tier list and then compare it to the original tier list I did about 2 months ago. So let's hop right into it. First up, let's take a look at Clubhouse. Clubhouse was the first new map added with Season 1, and it is a fantastic rendition of bringing in a map directly from another game, making just enough changes to make it feel more like an XDefiant map and making it work. Most of you probably already know that Clubhouse was originally a map from Rainbow Six Siege, and having had the chance to play it pretty extensively both over there and over here, I feel comfortable placing this at B tier. It's not a bad map, but it's not great either. It's a little too big for domination in my opinion, but it's a really fun capture the flag map and occupies alright. Next up is Times Square, and I have to say this is probably one of my least favorite maps overall, and definitely one of my least favorite linear style maps. It's just a snipe fest, and I really hate sniping mostly, so this one for me is C tier. Up next, we have one of our newer maps, another linear style map, Daytona. This one is pretty awesome, and the amount of flanks you can get on this map is just insane. So for me, this one is A tier. Falls just short of S tier because of the final straightaway for escort in the last zone and zone control. Could just use a little bit more cover. Not a ton, just a tad bit. But moving on, we have the newest addition to the game, Rockefeller. And I knew immediately after I got to play a few games on this map when it accidentally launched at the start of Season 1 that it was going to be one of my favorite maps. It's just super small and pure chaos. It is S tier hands down. You put a vector in my hands on this map and I'm dropping 50 easy. Up next is Showtime, and this map is the epitome of trash. I hate every part of this map, but it's not the worst of the worst, so I'm going to put it at D tier. Now we have good old Pueblito, and before Rockefeller, this one was one of my favorite smaller maps, so I'm going to put it at A tier, but since Rockefeller came out, it just doesn't have that S tier hype to it. Up next is Noodleplex, and I don't mind this map. It gets a lot of hate, and I just don't see why. I'm going to give it a B tier. It's not my favorite map by any means, but it's fine. Next up is another linear map, Midway, and I used to love Midway, like a lot, honestly, and it used to be my favorite linear style map, but since then it's definitely fallen from grace and is now just A tier for me. Maybe it got boring from playing it all the time, not entirely sure, but it's just not as good as it once felt, not for me at least. Then we have Meltdown, and even though this is the map where I have my highest kill game to date, it's still not a great map. And I'm going to put this at B tier only because it's good past the first section, but it's way too easy to get spawn trapped on this map and locked out of the first 2 zones. Escort is slightly easier though, so that's why it's not lower, but it could just use a little bit of fine tuning. Then we get into Liberty, and I'm not even going to spend a whole lot of time on this one. It's a mid map at best. It's C tier. Nothing spectacular, but also not terrible. So yeah, C tier is where it's going to be. Up next is Mayday, and again, this is another mid-tier map, and it's slightly better in my opinion than Liberty, but it's not quite better enough to be a B tier. So this one's also going to be in C tier. Then we get to Emporium, and this has got to be one of the worst maps in the game. There's just too much stuff. It's a camper's dream and my nightmare, and it's just not fun to play. So it's going to be D tier, but don't let that fool you. And it's definitely not to be outdone by our next map, Echelon HQ, which if memory serves me right, I'd place at the lowest tier, and that's where it's going to stay. This map is awful, and it barely belongs in F tier. I'm even hesitant to put it on the tier list at all. I once watched someone try to snipe on this map, and that's disgusting. Next up is Arena, and I honestly feel like 8 out of 10 games on ranked are played on this map. And while I don't hate it, it's not one I'd play on willingly outside of ranked. So I'm going to put it at B tier. Though I will say it's slowly becoming one of my more liked maps, possibly because of my vector build, but B is where it's going to be for now. Curious to see at the end of this how this stacks up to my old tier list though. Pretty sure I had that one a little bit lower, but we'll find out. Attica Heights. Attica Heights. Oh, Attica Heights. D tier. It's bad. Playing anything on this map. It's especially bad trying to play domination. That B zone is garbage and I hate everything about it. I'd much rather they flip it so that B zone would be top mid and the A and C zones in domination would be where the capture the flag points are at the bottom level. Then it might be a little better, but until then, it's going to be D. Now coming down to the final two maps, we have Zoo and Dumbo. Zoo has easily become my favorite zone control map, so this is going to be S tier right there up next to Rockefeller. It just feels very balanced. Enough cover, enough rotates, and just great map overall. Then we finally get to Dumbo, and again, another map that I don't hate, but also not something I would pick over much else, so D tier. The last time I was forced to play this map, the entire enemy team sat in the back corner junkyard and just sniped the whole match. Couldn't get anywhere near them. They had it all locked down on team deathmatch, so it's not like they were forced to ever come out. And it was just the worst time I've ever had on that map and left a bad taste in my mouth, so yeah, D tier. Now let's put up my original tier list and put these two side by side and see if anything's changed. So on the top left, we have my old tier list, and at the very bottom right, we have the new one that we just finished. And keep in mind that the original one that I did was about 2 months ago, and none of the new maps we got in season 1 will be on here. And also when I did this tier list, it was kind of a collab thing with a friend of mine. So some of the input from him may have moved some of these up or down more than where I would have put them by myself. But the first thing I noticed is Pueblito has dropped a bit and Zoo took its spot. Now for Showtime, this was mostly him. Showtime at the time was his favorite map, and I was lobbying for putting it at C if I remember correctly. So even taking into account that I would have put it C, it's definitely fallen a lot, even for me. Midway would have been an A for me then, but his input lowered it to a B. He's not really a zone control person, so it's about the same as where I would have placed it then. And a lot of the stuff has changed, but nothing really too drastic. Maybe everything moved 1 or 2 at most. Probably the biggest difference here is Showtime being at A and then at D now, but that just speaks more to how much his input influenced that decision than where I actually would have put it. But one thing remains the same, and that is that Echelon HQ is the worst map by far. Hands down, can't touch it. It's just terrible. It's in a class of its own, and this makes me wonder if we as a community collectively hate a map and it hardly ever gets voted on, would they do a map rework in the future? Or are the maps just set in stone and they are what they are? Let me know in the comments what your favorite and least favorite maps are, and if you missed the live stream yesterday, you missed an awesome announcement. Some of you may already know that I'll be having a charity stream for Stack Up, and the date for that is looking like it's going to be September 14th, and it's going to start around 1 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have more concrete details as we get closer to the date, about a week away, and I have a lot of stuff to get together before then, but I'm doing everything I can to make it as awesome as possible. Gonna have some giveaways planned and stuff for everybody. And the best news yet, and she may have spoiled it a little bit earlier than you're seeing this, but I've even partnered with Matcha to run this event, so likely she'll be live on Twitch and I'll be live here on YouTube, and hopefully we can raise a lot of money for this awesome charity. Going to be playing a lot of FPS games, maybe some party style games for the last couple hours if we start feeling silly or something, who knows. But definitely expect some XDefiant. I hope you all can make it and donate to a great cause. Feel free to spread the word to anyone you know. Follow me on Twitter because that's where I'll be doing a lot of the promo for it. So if you see any graphics there, feel free to reshare them. But yeah, should be a lot of fun and I can't wait. But until then, keep hyping up XDefiant, keep it alive, and I'll catch you in the next one.